What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Wanted to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. This app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use the promo code PFF and download the app now. Chargers in the first round, they took a running back. They took Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. Second round, they took Ole Miss wide receiver Tre Harris. Third round, Jamar Caldwell, the defensive tackle from Oregon. And then later in the third round, Kyle Kennard, the edge rusher from South Carolina. Actually, I think he was in the fourth round. Fourth round was Kyle Kennard there. Fifth round, they had a pair of selections in Keandre Lambert-Smith and Oronde Gadsden. Sixth round, they had two more as well. Branson Taylor, the offensive tackle from Pittsburgh, and then R.J. Mickens, the safety from Clemson. Finally, in the seventh round, another defensive back, Triquez Bridges, the cornerback from Florida. So, what'd you think of this one overall? PFF staff gave this one a B+ here for Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh coming together and making this class a reality. Would you agree with that?
I think a B+ is about right. What's funny is there's a couple of guys on that list that in a vacuum weren't necessarily my favorite players in this draft, but I think they are great fits for the Chargers, right? And you talk about, well, there's a debate about whether Omarion Hampton should have gone first round, but they did need a workhorse back, right? They have Najee Harris on a one-year deal. They don't have a whole lot behind him. So I think, obviously Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman getting that workhorse back. They want to run the football. They want to get behind Joe Alt in this offensive line. I think it makes sense. Was Tre Harris my favorite receiver in the draft? Not necessarily, but I think if you're looking, you mentioned about X receivers earlier, if you're looking for big X receiver who can get vertical and open things up underneath for Ladd McConkey, I think Tre Harris, that's really the role that he can play. Same goes for Keandre Lambert-Smith in the fifth round, right? He's not necessarily as big as Harris, but he's a vertical threat who can stretch the field. That's what Jim Harbaugh is consistently looking for. If you look at all the receivers he's taken the last 2 years, that's what he's looking for, is guys who can get vertical and open up those windows for Justin Herbert underneath. You know me, I love the Jamari Caldwell pick. I think this is a fantastic run defender, a guy that can replace Poona Ford in the production that you lost in the A-Gaps. Poona Ford was one of the best run defenders in the league last year. Now he's gone to the Rams. They had to replace that. I think Caldwell can do that on early downs for sure. I think Kyle Kennard, again, not my favorite guy. He was talked at times like a top 50 or 60 player. I wasn't in that boat, but to get him in the fourth round as edge depth, I'm all in on it. And then you know me, Oronde Gadsden and R.J. Mickens later on day 3. Two of my favorite players in the draft. I had Gadsden in my top 100. I think he was the most underrated. If you want to call him a tight end, if you want to call him a big slot, whatever you want to call him, I think he was kind of underrated in comparison to some of these other receiving tight ends. I think Gadsden's a great value in the fifth, and R.J. Mickens, we both love him, and he doesn't even have to start right away considering they have Derwin James and Alohi Gilman there. So I think when you look at the fits for this team and what Jim Harbaugh, what Joe Ortiz, what Greg Roman, what Jesse Minter, what they were all looking for, I think they got a lot of really good football players. I'm in on a B+ for the Chargers here. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'd even give it an A, depending on what you think of a running back going in the first round. I think that they hit a lot of their needs with the exact type of players that they needed here. I agree. I think that Omarion Hampton, even for them signing Najee Harris, Hampton can absolutely be a 3-down back for them. Wide receiver Tre Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith, you mentioned it. Those are the exact types of wide receivers that they wanted to add. The same thing with Kyle Kennard, an outside linebacker type who is a stand-up edge rusher. He can play behind Tuli Tuipulotu and Khalil Mack. You just don't have to have him start right away. And I think that he'd be great as a designated pass rusher for you. You mentioned what Jamari Caldwell can be. I love the R.J. Mickens pick in the sixth round. I thought he was picked way too late. So it was just a draft where I thought the Chargers got pretty good players, and I thought they got the right kinds of players. I think they really understand their roster and where they needed to get better. And I love how they divvy it up. I love how they prioritize things. And again, all depending on what you think of them taking a running back in the first round versus maybe one of these other receivers or defensive linemen. But you've got to remember this, when you look at how this draft unfolded, normally when I went through scenarios for the Chargers, I liked them picking defensive line in the first round. I liked them picking one of those defensive tackles. But the Chargers just watched Derek Harmon go off the board one pick before they came on the board at number 22. And so at that point, Derek Harmon was gone, Walter Nolan was gone, Kenneth Grant was gone, and obviously Mason Graham was gone as well. So they didn't reach for a Tyleik Williams or TJ Sanders or like whoever else it was going to be from that defensive tackle spot, like Alfred Collins. Like I thought that those guys were all day two type of picks. And the Chargers didn't want to reach, and they instead went with the running back that was available because I don't think that they loved the pass catchers that were available either. They could have gone with Matthew Golden, who was still there, who got picked one selection after that. But ultimately, I like the way that they divvied things up. I like the way that they prioritize things. And I just really do feel as though the Chargers as a whole got a lot better as a football team after this draft. So I agree with that grade. This is pretty solid here.